result, right? The AI system would then uptake the spreadsheet, right, Excel, and ingest that spreadsheet and end up building a complex decision tree of rules. Right? Those rules would then feed into a JavaScript framework that I built, right? That would then dynamically render the JavaScript and inject attributes into what they call the DOM tree, which is when you look at a web page, it's really made up of a tree called a DOM, right? These nodes, and those nodes then were like, they would be like decorated with like fruit, right? Which are called the attributes. And these attributes were dynamic, and then they were defined by a dictionary, and those dictionaries were backed by the actual definition was actually code. So it would be like render, don't render, read only, not read only, you know, different type of rules, right? Yeah, and it would then populate the page, and it would be contextually correct to represent whatever that policy is, right? Even today, to this day, there's nothing like this in the market. So I was using that back then, JavaScript, microservices. So I've always been, I come from an artistic background, and then got introduced into tech. So, and then because when I was in the Navy, I realized I saw my very first computer was a Hughes computer, test tubes. Yeah. My very first program, I used to punch, literally set pins, 5 pins called 5-dot baud. Set those pins 5-bit, and then punch, and then roll.
I had punch. For the tape, I had the
How you guys doing
All
now?
right. I'm Caleb.
Caleb, Mark Anthony.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Bill, I'm Caleb. Nice to meet you. How's it going, man?
Zach.
Zach, nice to meet you.
Zach, our speaker tonight.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pleasure, Zach.
So we got food coming around 7.
Okay, great.
I was gonna ask you, because there's pizza out
There's
there.
something going on up there.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
actually
they-
one things going on there.
Make sure we get ours.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I go right to there, I need something I want.
I think go for it. I don't think they're checking to see what you're
Yeah.
going to or anything.
This place is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's awesome, yeah.
Times when they got meetings everything, each.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How big is the space?
There's 3 floors. There's this one. There's 3 floors. It's like the 6th, the 8th, and the 16th, I think is what it is. Yeah.
They have, one place they have a den just for virtual reality.
Yeah.
And another one they have a den just for DOD.
Yeah, that's the 8th floor is Defense Innovation Unit and AFWorks, things like that.
Okay.
So it's really cool though. We just, my company got an accelerator 2 months ago, and we do cybersecurity, but we use distributed ledger side.
It's like a shit.
Yeah. Very
Gotcha.
cool. So yeah, we don't actually use Fabric, we use Hashgraph, Adairs Hashgraph, but from what I hear, they're kind of, maybe have something in common.
They've got some stuff in common. Adara is more public, so for that you're relying on encryption rather than physical isolation.
Okay.
I'm more along the lines of thinking that if you can go private for enterprise, it's usually a better bet.
Yeah, especially
Well,
for brand.
It's just a matter of building infrastructure. And
Yeah.
maintenance is the issue.
Mhm.
So you got to find like a blockchain as a service that solves those problems. Because like
Here, up on the 16th floor, there's a group called the Austin Blockchain Collective, which is looking at more the business issue of things. And they've had IBM a couple of times come to give a talk on that supply
Mhm.
chain.
Oh, yeah.
we've been in talks with IBM.
What?
We've been in talks with IBM as well.
But it's a private.
Just on a Hyperledger Fabric.
But it's, yeah, and it's a, it's,
Fabric.
not, which is,
Well, they call IBM blockchain, but it's Fabric.
Fabric, yeah, it's like.
Well, it's just it means developing on top of Fabric.
Yeah,
But
that's,
not on top, it is Fabric.
Well, Fabric is
well, and then they've got their function.
It operates the blockchain Fabric,
Yeah, but
the code
I'm
base,
sure
The
they have.
Hyperledger is
the foundation.
Is it Hyperledger IBM or is Fabric?
No, well, no,
Hyperledger.
Hyperledger,
is the basic part. It's
Generic now.
Hyperledger is a foundation
Mhm.
underneath Linux.
Gotcha.
Linux
Okay.
has multiple foundations, right?
Okay.
They have a JavaScript foundation, they have an automotive foundation, so there's the foundation. Hyperledger is the foundation that IBM and Intel created in 2016
Gotcha, okay.
in order to promote the enterprise, blockchain in the enterprise. So I created Austin Blockchain Technology in 2015,
Okay.
and Capital Factory recruited me because I was the only one in town,
Mhm.
right? And they saw this coming, they thought it was
So before that time, there was also a group which meets tonight, EFF. They were exploring it, starting with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, that-
And there were lawyers already working on the legality of the
Yeah.
whole thing, so.
Very clear.
I would say they got into bot ethics of
Yeah, well, there was a lot
guy
of,
ran a cyber, that's at Cybers, is what I think, cyber rights, and they explored a lot of
That's cool.
human side, say,
Mhm.
technologies.
I'm an enterprise architect for my whole career, right? And when I ripped apart Bitcoin, I immediately saw the utility of it in the enterprise,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So 2016, I created Austin Blockchain Technology with the focus of the nuts and bolts, because that's what I do, nuts and bolts. I don't care. It's not that I don't care, but there was people already talking about the business side of it, right?
Yeah.
But no one would talk to you about how does it work?
Mhm.
What is it made of?
Yeah.
Right? So that's what my focus.
Okay.
So, but I realized immediately, and I remember my very first meetup, they started throwing food at me, booing me. These were the permissionless guys. These were the anarchists. These were the
Okay.
Bitcoin guys. These were the Ethereum guys.
Mhm.
And I remember I get up and I started telling them my vision,
Yeah.
right? And it was comprehensive. It wasn't, right? It's a comprehensive vision, but I saw it in the enterprise. And they refused that, right? So I realized I got a wide awakening there, but it didn't stop me. But I predicted that IBM, Microsoft, one of those guys will soon be in this game, because it's like, I know if I see it, right, knowing my background, because I was a hired gun for IBM most of my career, Sun Microsystems, so it's like, my gut was telling me, screaming, this technology is like, I can use this as an architect inside the enterprise, right? So I said, I know IBM is already thinking about this. And then I heard people would come and tell me, IBM is already looking at Ethereum. And I said, oh, okay. So I said, that makes sense. But they took what they call IBM blockchain, which if you go out to get, I don't know if it's still out there, what was their first incarnation of this thing. But then it was a year later, they founded with Intel, Hyperledger Foundation, and a few others. Right? Now there's over, I think, 200. Everybody that is somebody is in it, and everybody that was pushing back on it
Yeah.
is now coming, including consensus. So if you know who consensus is, consensus is
I should be in Austin
is
December 10th.
the
Yeah, I guess
root
it's December
of
10th.
Ethereum. Okay, Joe Lulu, right, the founder, right, and consensus forever was pushing a permissionless blockchain,
Yeah.
public blockchain, right? Until 2 years ago, when they were on the verge of bankruptcy, and he realized he needed to pivot, right, and they went full on enterprise.
Yeah.
Now they have a product called Pantheon, which they don't call it Pantheon now, they call it, I forget what they call it now. But when they first introduced it, it was called Pantheon, open source, written in Java,
Yeah.
right? But it's an Ethereum clone.
Was it back?
With EVM and everything,
Really?
okay? So I ripped it apart and did a full UML model on it and put it up out in the public to explore. And now they've joined Hyperledger, they donated to Hyperledger, it's in Hyperledger, I forget what it's called. But it's the code base, and it's Ethereum. But even before that, a year and a half ago, Burrow joined. Burrow was the first clone of the EVM. You know what the EVM is? That's the Ethereum virtual machine.
Okay.
Okay? That's what runs Solidity, the smart contract. That's the heart and soul of Ethereum, right? They joined. Ethereum would have joined Hyperledger about 2.5 years ago, but one of the key developers of Ethereum What's the licensing that people don't, that enterprises don't like?
MIT or?
No, not MIT. MIT is great. MIT is Apache.
GNU.
GNU. It was under a GNU license, right? It was under a GNU license. So anything that goes into Hyperledger has to be Apache 2,
Okay.
right? Because with Apache 2, you can do anything you want with it. You don't have, you can clone it, you can do sell it commercial. You don't have to like be under any kind of legal restriction. Not only that, you have to sign over and nullify any kind of claim on any kind of patent. Okay? So in the enterprise space, my space, no enterprise would take anything except Apache 2 or MIT, right?
Okay.
Because the liability is just, it's just forget it. It's like you're not going to take that chance because it's just not there. Now Apache 2 is out of Apache. You know Apache, the Apache organization. Without Apache, we wouldn't be here today, right? I mean, it freed the world, right? When I was your age, when I was growing up, I used to crave for source code. So I built my life in the world of assembler and machine language, because that's the closest I could get to the reverse engineering to get to the source code. How are they doing it, right? And how many times did I go into deep depression because Microsoft would introduce something and it'd be like, I couldn't figure, I had, it's like, game over as a software developer. Right? But today it's different. But the point is, what I'm getting to is, the guy, one of the key fundamental guys behind open source Apache is Brian Bellendorf. Brian Bellendorf is one of the key authors of Apache Web Server.
I was talking to him yesterday.
Okay, yeah.
Good conversation.
To me, he's like Jesus Christ. He's like Jimi Hendrix. Software world. Right?
He's always
Right?
ponytail. He's a mouse.
If you Google him, you'll figure out his background. He was the guy that took when we had what things called shareware and freeware, right? And he said, "Fuck all that shit. Let's get rid of that. Let's go open source." Right? Yeah. Created Apache Foundation, ran Apache Foundation, and gave all of us all that beautiful software, right? That we can, billionaires off of, right?
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
they tapped him a year after the Hyperledger Foundation started. They tapped him to become the executive director. So now he runs Hyperledger Foundation.
Sorry to interrupt.
Wow. Very
But caveat, the Hyperledger Foundation is not like Apache Foundation.
You
because
said-
it's made up of
I just checked it because I thought that's.
800 pounds worldwide corporate gorillas.
we're on
That's
Yeah, I know, they actually tried to hire me CTO.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So,
We work pretty
And
closely.
then I can go with them because they weren't open source.
right, and open source, it's the same thing.
Have you ripped it apart?
Well, we actually work pretty closely with them. We're on their platform, so we're like
No, they could go on.
But he's building his whole business on, have your abstract, right?
Yes.
yeah.
I remember when I ripped it apart, right, I was so pissed off because I said, you guys won't open source this, but Lemon wrote it, he took open source list,
We're in the.
okay, open source list,
What is some of
and
it?
then that's the heart and soul.
Oh, this is just that.
And then on top of that is this Java API, the Java layer. So if you build back the Java layer underneath the bindings, is list.
That kind of establishes
The
the
list that he
ecosystem.
used was
So
an
they're
open
VC
source
fund.
version of list.
Really?
So he
And
used
then they
open
also
source software to create this predicate algebra that creates the algorithms of neighborhoods. Yeah, right? And then he layered it on top of that with Java and bindings, so that all you see is his Java API, and you write to his Java API.
People that come
Wow.
Yeah.
in, so we get access.
That's
to
pretty,
the
I mean,
investor
that's funny, they raised so much money, I can't believe it.
That's all,
Yeah.
that's all they did.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it has a silo.
Yeah, because it is, so very cool,
Right, well, yeah, and I don't know,
Well, we're called.
I mean, here's a gentleman you can talk to, because he
No,
knows his whole business on, right?
he's my business partner, actually, co-founder.
Oh, okay, well, there you go, so you guys are well aware of it,
Oh, yeah.
of where it's going, but how does it, will it ever become ubiquitous? Probably not, it might be a niche way for guys like you that can take it and have strict focus on it, and make sure that you have the right licensing and the right relationship so they don't fuck you over,
Yeah.
right? Because that's your,
That's
to me as an investor, that would be something that I would be looking at, right? Because they basically own you. Because if they decide to change
Yeah.
or they sell,
You're,
you guys are fucked.
yeah, we're more or less married, you know.
So you need to-
It sucks, but.
For me, if I was advising you, I would say, you guys need to make sure you have an adapter layer
Yeah.
in your software architecture, so that in the event that they do get bought by SoftBank or somebody else, or the Chinese or whatever, and they become too restrictive for you, then it's like, well, fuck you, then we're just gonna put another.
Yeah, so from the get-go, we make consensus modular, so it doesn't really matter on what protocol we're coming.
There you go.
So like, we built on Neo, we built on Ethereum,
Yeah,
but we're in a situation that requires a lot of high throughput.
yeah,
So,
that's what you like.
yeah, Hedera's,
It's lightweight, high throughput.
Yeah.
Yeah, get a lot of those good faster, because your space is about that throughput, right? I designed an emergency management system for LCRA, DHS, right? With like 10,000 sensors, right? So it was like it's like the Niagara Falls of sensor data coming in, right?
Yeah.
MQTT, AMQP, and several other protocols, right? So it was all coming into Kafka, getting crunched into Kafka and then split out to a microservice architecture. So yeah, so for what you're trying to do in that architecture up front, capturing that in the blockchain, you definitely need that type of lightweight.
Yeah, and of course, and that's like, and right now, when we're saw the establishment of like, basically the protocols that allow us to achieve network instances, being modular is very critical, because you don't, and even with Hyperledgers, like, you was like, well, what's going on with that organization as a whole, or Ethereum, as you mentioned, consensus totally messed that up until they were going bankrupt. So it's just, until we have established protocols, it's really hard to pick and choose.
Yeah.
That's why looking at Hedera, they have like a strong governing council, they have a good board, and we're selling towards to the enterprise, so we want an enterprise-minded software.
Yeah, and as you guys gain traction and relevance, you'll have implicit influence, right? Because they want that. They want to be able to showcase you, right? So that's good.
Yeah.
Right? And who knows, maybe you guys can get big enough that you guys can just go buy them out and become.
That's it.
Yeah. Buy the
There we go.
Right? At least get on the board, at least get to the, because see that the whole thing about these public, quote, public blockchains is human element. And people just these people just sort of like they continue to refuse to accept the human element, right? It's like EOS and all these guys. It's like anything that involves humans, right? There's gameplay, right? And it's going to happen. Just like with Libra, right? I mean, you're not going to tell me that the gameplay wasn't there for the day to come, that they own the whole platform. I mean, it's just, and even if you start out blue sky and walking on water, the day will come when the incentives will take control of you. So unless someone has ever put $1 billion check in front of you,
This hasn't happened yet.
you will never know who you really are. You can say whatever you want to say.
And so that
I know because I've been there. I've been there twice, right? And every time my partners all fucking turned, their morality went out the window,
Yeah.
right? And money corrupts, absolutely. I'm not putting myself on a pedestal, but I don't know why I'm special in that sense. It's like I'm not turned on by the money. I mean, someday I'm going to die. It's just like, well, you know why? I know why. Because I'm an artist at heart. I got into technology inadvertently through the Navy because I was a lost soul. And they said, oh yeah, dude, you can have any program you want. You're really smart. You can do technical too. And I said, I can. I said, oh, okay, cool. And I remember my very first computer when I was punching 5.baud and looking at literally at the back of an old used computer with the fucking wire, the back plate of the wires, right, where the bug was actually formed. and watching the computer boot up and watching the test tubes heat up, right? And I remember my instructor used to say, all right, you guys, you see this plexiglass box? Don't fucking touch it. It's $50,000. 25-year-old ladies in the Philippines make these, each one of these planes, 16K memory. Each plane was 4K ferrous oxide rings with 3 wires ran through it.
What?
Right?
That's fine.
It's like crazy. And when but the day that I got I actually ejaculated mentally was when he said it was a Saturday afternoon, and he brought us up and he showed us on the radar screen. I was an FT, fire control technician. He showed us on the radar screen. He said, let me show you what this computer can do. This was fire control, so we used to like track missiles with it, right? And he said, let me show you what this computer can do. And he showed us asteroids on the radar screen. Right? And I said, oh my God, you mean that I can literally create anything I want in my imagination. So at that point, I realized that software was my paint and medium. Yeah, my paint. It's like, it's just, and that's from that day on, it's like, that's all I did do.
Authorization.
Yeah. And that's what I did. So my startup is HempChain, right?
Oh,
Yeah, HempChain. So it's a dual blockchain. So it's small tooth underneath for the IoT sensor network, right? And then I'm writing an intermediary layer that normalizes and pushes the data up to Fabric. And then Fabric runs the smart contracts. And then on top of that is another layer that actually runs up to the application layer, which is ERP, CRM, e-commerce, HR, MRP. So that's its architecture.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So,
And its focus is narrow in the sense of industrial hand.
yeah. Well, so,
Mark.
you said that.
I can't recognize you without your mustache at all.
Oh, I didn't recognize you. You got a haircut.
Do you have a big picture or something?
No, I just.
Time for a change.
Oh,
Yeah, time for a change.
So what do you do on the IoT level?
What am I meaning to sign?
Right. You just said that's awesome.
Yeah, IoT sensors.
Yeah. So I
Right?
You do a lot.
Temperature, humidity,
I'm going to shove it.
geo, soil.
That's awesome. So you have like a whole.
Working with ST microelectronics.
Okay, great.
Right.
So you have like, it's pretty like a whole, like an IoT solution.
Oh, yeah.
From farm to.
Yeah, farm, machinery, all my. Yeah, so I grew up, like what you guys are doing, I grew up, actually, I was doing it with Johnson Controls. Early in my career. So like, if you ever see the show, Miami Vice, the original one, and it has a panorama, there's a 65-story building in that panorama, which was that time was operating in Miami. And it's called Southeast Banking Center. That was one of my sites I would manage. So I do HVAC, lighting, and security. Like the Boca Raton Mall, I did the entire Boca Raton Mall, HVAC, lighting, and security. I used to do JCPenney's. We go to like JCPenney stores, the jewelry safes, that are all encased in the mirrors. I used to do all those, right? Job control. I was actually wrote for them a transpire operation, so it's CNC to natural language processing. So I could literally write human language, right? And then run it through a transpiler. The transpiler would then create a CNC, then you take the CNC and then pump it into the actual controller. Because they hired me because they were switching from old controllers, just like in the 80s, they were switching from these old controllers, analog-based type controllers, they were buying XT motherboards. Remember XT computers? Charlie Chaplin, IBM. I actually did the Boca Raton Mall for IBM, or not the Boca Raton Mall, the Boca Raton plant for IBM. This is one of my job sites too. From the factory automation, these are some what they call Series 1 computer. Johnson Controls had that, so I still have to reveal that. Before. You know, one called Borders. Dairy, I used to go out to dairy plants throughout Ohio and the Midwest. can wire up and do all the programming and monitoring, everything I used to do was RS-422, just wiring, with all the AC switches, I mean, all that shit, and punch down, so it's like for me right now, I'm getting the keys, so it's all coming back.
It's all easily
Yeah.
available.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, all I gotta do is put it together.
Oh, yeah.
I got some here.
It's a tender, excuse me.
Not
yet. That's true.
Chris, call it.
Here's what's happening with the
Oh, yeah.
We're consolidating all the people that have been so great.
Well, very glad you guys showed up. You know, I always like to look at my media as like quality over quantity.
Of course.
And given the subject matter that I deal with, I'm trying to figure out, there are a whole lot of people that come to it because,
I don't know why.
it's technical.
Yes.
It is, yeah, like I said, it's not as sexy as AI or something like
Yeah, it's not blue sky.
It's not space travel, it's not drones.
Yeah.
But it's definitely.
I mean, maybe a lot of people look at it as work. I don't know. But for me, it's like in the sand, playing in the sand, It's like, it's fun, that's what I do.
There's so many.
Other people like to play golf, I like to, tear apart bits and bytes, right? Yeah.
When is, that's what your presentation?
I'll be presenting next Monday at Blockchain Collective for the first time. So,
I think we're starting.
Didn't you just do that? Didn't you just do it for suggestion?
our chief technical officer presented at the Hedera Hashgraph.
Oh, the hashgraph. Oh, okay. You're coming up.
Yeah, so, and then my president and some Swiss guys.
But you're not gonna really be going technical, right? You're gonna be doing like your business model.
Probably like, yeah, some use cases and like.
See, that's the stuff that doesn't turn me on.
Yeah,
The
I'll be.
stuff that turns me on is like, you getting into the code, like explaining like protocols and showing demos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the wrong guy for that.
Yeah,
I'll do the.
Yeah, you can't do that with them. They're more general.
More like an application.
Yeah.
I'll be saying
Exactly.
that one.
Half of the rides are taken.
I'll be like, centralized with logs are dangerous. This is why we. That will do that.
Yeah, when I'm watching it and I'm asking myself, it's like, what's the protocol? What protocol is it? What's your interface to the devices? It's like, how are you, drill down on your consensus. How are you building your architecture? How do you adapt? What's your strategy for adapting to, the 18 million different standards and devices that are out there, right? Because when you go out into the industrial space, everything from Modbus to goddamn, you know what, I mean, right? I mean, and that shit is like still old, ancient. It's like, you can go out to these factories and you can still find an abacus running.
Yeah.
It's like, everybody get metrics, flip those flips. It's like,
It's pretty wild how some of that stuff just hasn't gotten updated. Now they're just a little bit crass.
and then you're competing against IOTA, which wants to change the whole world.
I was talking about IOTA?
Yeah. So, they said, no, we're not gonna adapt to anything. We're gonna have you change.
Yeah, and they kind of
Well, they got Schneider behind them, right?
which is a huge,
Yeah, which is really huge. But, from my perspective, long-term play, I mean, I guess 20, 30 years, it's possible, right? And as you have maturation in the industry, but no one's gonna go out and wholesale change, right? Some of these places have machines that are 30, 40 years old running. The best you're gonna do is retrofit, right? You're gonna put a vibration sensor on there, right?
Yes.
Put a vibration sensor on that motor.
Right.
Okay, what's the benefit? Oh, well, now we have AI that tells us when we see so much vibration,
Yeah.
we can do predictive analytics,
Yeah.
and we can, like for instance, in, like an LCRA, if you let a turbine go bad, you're talking like over $1 million in replacement or in repair.
Yeah.
So you just understand, they want to know predictive analytics. They want to know when it's time to go out there and do maintenance.
Yeah.
They don't want to wait till failure occurs.
Right, so you have
So,
downtime too.
yeah, so there's a strong incentive for like guys like you to go out there and put retrofits into those devices, whether it's temperature, humidity, vibration, pressure, right?
The other one is really, any data point that they're taking in is something that can be used.
As long as you can aggregate and quantify
Yeah.
and then deliver knowledge.
Right, yeah, they take us and management pretty seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you
You don't really have to deliver too much knowledge, because if you can just aggregate and save a guy a trip,
Yeah.
right? Because what do they do today? They have to walk out visually.
Yeah.
And
Record.
Yeah,
So what happens when you record? You would put down a 9 when it should have been a 6, because you're hung over.
And it's like, you have to trust the guy to walk out there and read it first of all. And then you, I mean, how many times does he do that? You know, maybe a handful of times a day when you could, have a sensor.
And nobody's following him up.
No one's following him up. And then
Whatever he writes in that log, put it in his computer, that's it.
So then he writes it down, and then he has to enter in the computer. That's 2 points of failure right there, and we're having to read it
And then
right.
what's his incentives?
Exactly. What's he, like, what's?
Does he really want to have to go change that? If he knows that on the next holiday coming up, that if he puts down the real information, he'll be in there working.
Yeah.
So human element says, oh, I'm gonna fudge the numbers, I'll get it after the holidays.
Yeah. Push it back a little further. Or do you think
But then what happens after the holidays? He gets sick,
Yeah.
he goes on leave,
Good.
everybody just runs by the numbers. And then the generator, the bearings go bad, the whole thing seizes up, now it's a $400,000 job.
Yeah.
All because Bobby, right,
Yeah.
didn't want to put down 400 when he should have put down 200.
Exactly. I mean,
Because he didn't want to have to come in on the holiday coming up to replace the motor and the bearings and all that.
Yeah. It's, I mean, and even if you, like, you don't even know if he checked it or not, he could have.
Yeah, exactly.
He could have never got off his ass at all.
Yeah, you know why? Because he's 3 months away from retirement.
Right. He's like, yeah, I checked it, last week and it said this. Why did it change? Why would it change? Yeah.
Or he's got a hot day, he wants to get out of the shop.
It's endless.
It's humans, right?
It's humans, yeah.
So being able to have a machine do the monitoring and then aggregate and feed that data up,
Yeah,
and then to have it on a blockchain.
is great. I mean, that's
Because
like,
now they can't go and fuck it up.
you can go back and change it. And if something does go wrong, you can go back, where, at what point did something happen?
Right,
We can
so
know
the
exactly.
thing that you guys should be working on, probably already are, is one of the most, selling blockchain is like trying to sell, syrup in winter on a tree,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it just puts people to sleep, goes all back, there's no glitch to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you get to a point where you can, the demo that you want to go show people is the timeline. You want a scrubber, like in media, a media scrubber,
Yeah.
right? Video, take a video now. So you want a demo where you have your time series data collected over, say, 5 years or whatever, or 5 year period, whatever. Some type of regulatory response period, right? And break it down by quarter or whatever. Keyed into some other external event, like maybe stocks or whatever, stock price or whatever, or other economic events related to the organization from a financial perspective. And then use that scrubber, and the idea is that it's like a time machine. That you can literally scrub, right? And go to a period of time, and by doing this, you can literally see the organization in time lapse, right? And then be able to have the scrubber with a dial on it so you can dial in and dial out.
Almost like one of those stock apps or something like that, where you can check a timeline of.
Well, they don't even have that, what I'm talking but you're getting close.
Okay.
That just means what?
That makes a lot of sense.
Whenever we wanted to start.
Are you guys ready?
You ready? I think we're ready.
Cool. Let's start up. Give you that.
So, without further ado, Zach Daker Feldman.
Well done. That was well done.
From Zua?
Zua, yep.
Yeah, Zua, which is part of a member of the Hyperledger Foundation, an official member, right? And they're not you're not really they're not really baked on one particular platform. So it's a very unique company with a lot of experience as far as the platforms go. So Zach is Yale graduate in economics. He's Zua's evangelist, so he's going to give us a rundown on their platform and talk to us about the experiences and give us insight onto the realities and the myths, right, of blockchain. And it'll be good because they've been around now for a little while, and he's got a lot of experience that he can share with us. So, Zach.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Is this being live
And
streamed?
it is being streamed.
Up there?
Yep.
Oh, fantastic.
And we do have people that are watching because they text me and ask me if it was streaming. So it's
Gotcha.
from South Africa to South Africa and I forget where else.
Great. That's great to hear.
And it'll be recorded and put on the Austin Tech Live
Mhm.
forever too.
Okay.
So we will use that as collateral.
Sounds good to me. All right. Well, I'll just dive in. First off, thanks everyone for turning up. This is great. Let's dive right into this. So I'm going to be talking about real-world building experience with Fabric, specifically how that relates to our experience as a startup. Brief little bit about me. Mark touched on a couple of these, but I'm a Yale University economics alumnus, an active member of the Denver blockchain community. I run a blockchain blog on Medium, and I joined Zua earlier this year to evangelize enterprise blockchain adoption. So I've been traveling the country, giving presentations at various spots, and just generally enjoying myself talking about blockchain and about Zua. A little bit about Zua. So Zua is the world's only serverless, distributable, cloud-based private ledger. It can be a playground for experimenting with blockchain apps, a test environment for smart contracts, and a blockchain as a service for mature applications. So before we get into the nitty-gritty stuff, I want to briefly give a quick anecdote to set the tone. So Long Blockchain Corp is a company that produces iced tea and lemonade. In late December 2017, they changed their name from Long Island Iced Tea to Long Blockchain Corp in order to essentially exploit the blockchain craze. What was the result of that? It was a 3x rise in stock market value in just 7 days. A realization by the market that change actually meant nothing. And then an even more massive drop in value alongside a delisting from the NASDAQ and an FBI investigation a couple years down the road. So this move was purely based on speculation about the blockchain back when it was immature and the hopes that they could benefit off of the hype. 2 years later, we may actually be reaching the turning point. It may be too late for Long Blockchain Corp, but the true value of blockchain tech is just beginning to come to light, and companies aren't adopting it solely as a stock play anymore. All that being said, let's dive in. So today I'm going to be discussing what really is blockchain. What's the difference between public or private and which one you should choose? What inspired the creation of Zua? How Zua was accepted by the market and what it suggests about the past and current state of enterprise blockchain. Where do we go from here, and how to deploy a Hyperledger Fabric app in less than 1 minute. So I'll end with a demonstration of the Zua application, of the Zua platform. So what is blockchain anyway? There are countless explanations of blockchain technology. A blockchain is considered a distributed network, but Amazon offers a QLDB, which is a blockchain database with a central authority. The World Food Program runs a blockchain that only contains one party, so is that considered a blockchain since it isn't distributed? Some say a blockchain requires an associated digital token. So the term's been stripped of much of its meaning, and there's a lot of complexity there.
Pardon me?
This is the Wikipedia thing?
Wikipedia
No,
thing?
it's not.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Is this Sweet 100? There's like 150
No.
something?
Oh, it might be 150, but they've changed the name.
All right, thank you.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Basically, all this is saying is that it's been problematic since day one what the definition of blockchain is. So for our purposes, a blockchain is, among other things, distributable but not always distributed. And it's a ledger that's transactional in nature and represents states with an append-only tamper-evident data structure. Now, when an enterprise is choosing between public and private blockchain networks, there are important things to consider. Public networks have low overhead because they're public and serverless. So there's minimal infrastructure to manage. If you want to keep your data private on a public blockchain, you rely on encryption. Well, if you want to keep your data private on a private blockchain, you rely on physical isolation of the data. Private networks can be more secure in the long run, but they require a lot of overhead in order to build the infrastructure and manage it. So while frameworks like Hyperledger Fabric can be used, customization, testing, deployment, and maintenance require a lot of time, expertise, and resources. These factors can make that decision between public and private tough. And then there's the issues of what blockchain technology's capabilities are. There's a couple of myths and realities that I have on this page. First one is blockchain is a silver bullet for any problems of traceability, trust, or disintermediation, when in reality, blockchain is a part of a bigger chain of regulations, open standards, legal frameworks, user experience, hardware, and software. Another one is that disintermediation is always better than a trusted third party. When in reality, a trusted third party is often the most efficient and reliable solution, depending on the scenario. The last one is that blockchain makes digital transformation easier, when in reality, it actually makes it tougher. All of this is not to say that blockchain isn't a revolutionary technology. There's a reason we started a business in this industry. It's just a complex and difficult technology to harness, and it's simply not a universal solution, and currently has relatively limited use cases, though the number of use cases grows every day. All of this is to say it needs to be approached with a mature view of the technology. So we've now defined blockchain, compared public and private, and brushed over its capabilities. If you decide to go down the blockchain as a service route, there's a general landscape that you need to navigate. There are two types of platforms for cloud services that offer blockchain capabilities. First one is the blockchain consortium platforms, which are focused on the core blockchain services, the network stack, and the consortium that runs on top of it. Then there's the blockchain applications platforms, which are focused on the developer experience and the creation of business applications, either for general productivity or for specific verticals. The incumbents, like your IBMs and Amazons, are purely focused on the later stages when deploying a functioning network. Your true blue blockchain companies like Kaleido, BlockApps, and Zua are more focused on building applications and making the lives of devs easier. Now that we have context, let's progress to the next section of this presentation. So Zua started off lessons learned from a project on another company. So Aleppo, a telecommunications infrastructure company established in 2004, actually out of Austin as well, was looking to launch a mobile money platform. This was coming on the heels of M-Pesa, which is a mobile phone-based money transfer system launched in 2007 by Vodafone, with a focus on the developing world. So Aleppo began this project at a disadvantage and needed a strong differentiator. In addition to this strong differentiator, this platform needed to scale to the needs of large financial service providers, have an easy-to-use interface for administrative management, facilitate coordination between partnerships, and be deployed to the market as quickly as possible to beat the competition. Now, some of these things make blockchain a good solution, others make it a bit tougher. It's compliant, auditable, scalable, and partnership focused, those led to the blockchain conclusion. Ease of use and a quick deployment, however, made it much more difficult because blockchain technology is complex and a network is very difficult to build for numerous reasons. So what was the result of this project? Well, Hyperledger Fabric was ultimately chosen after comparing it to several other technologies and has unique features that make it more suitable for enterprises. It supports smart contracts, permits private state channels, it's scalable, it has increased confidentiality, it's fast, and the community around it is fantastic. Looking back on it, there were a lot of lessons learned. It was expensive to develop, required significant pressure on the DevOps team. There was distractions, including a lot of focus just on blockchaining, not on the actual business. There was domain-specific knowledge necessary. Blockchain administration functions had to be built in-house, and all in all, it boils down to this fact. The perks of blockchain technology are valuable, but experimenting, developing, and deploying a blockchain system is complex, and managing the infrastructure is a nightmare. It would have been good in that scenario if we had had a cloud-based offering that abstracted away all of that complexity. And that was when the team had an aha moment and realized that these problems weren't specific to this team, and that all enterprises adopting blockchain dealt with this issue. So the trials and tribulations of adding blockchain to mobile money inspired Zua. It was a spin-off from Aleppo that had one mission: make enterprise blockchain easy. With Zua, it was now possible to adopt a multi-party trust model, run a ledger entirely on the cloud or hybrid, rapidly build, test, deploy, and monitor a robust enterprise blockchain app, and host a network on Fabric, but migrate data to public chains if needed. What Zua became after working on this mobile money platform was a lot more. It became an enterprise blockchain application company that offered unique value propositions not seen anywhere else on the market. It's a private blockchain for cloud and hybrid deployments that offers ready-to-use pre-built smart contracts, including on asset management, ERC20 and 721, on Hyperledger Fabric or Ethereum, as well as the bonds, voting, a couple others as well. It offers custom smart contracts that deploy in less than a minute. It offers built-in tooling and middleware that shifts the concern of API endpoints, queuing, and scalable asynchronous processing from the developer to Zua. And it offers serverless and still private infrastructure management to remove the need for the client to manage blockchain infrastructure. One of its biggest use cases was discovered a little bit later on. So Zua is distributable, which means it can be both centralized and decentralized. The ability to start centralized and move to distributed at any time is a core feature that makes Zua unique. Centralized is easier and suited for earlier stages such as rapid prototyping, demos, and proof of concepts, while decentralized is normally used for later stages when the project goes live and trust is facilitated through through decentralization in the blockchain. This transition allows for experimentation and saves money, resources, and time, as there's no need to build a consortium until validation is complete. You can transition your consortium to another cloud provider like AWS or IBM or Microsoft Azure, but still have your smart contracts located on Zua and built through our platform. Then once you're complete, you can use it in a loop. Continue to develop new features, innovate and improve on your project, get feedback, then deploy the updated project. This helps you stay ahead of the times. So specifically for Hyperledger, Zua is a vendor and member of the Hyperledger community, and we have been for a while now. We also contribute to the open source community on GitHub, Outside of these things, though, put succinctly, Zua is a Hyperledger Fabric application platform. Hyperledger is a fantastic distributed ledger technology, but Zua goes beyond just infrastructure and into application development. For example, we built a layer on top of Hyperledger Fabric to provide access to asset management and ERC-20 and 721 applications. And it's one of the first times tokenization has been possible on the Hyperledger network. So Hyperledger's importance can't really be understated, but is it really necessary to have the domain-specific knowledge, like ordering services, channel states, and chain code, Kafka, the orderer, to properly harness the technology? We wanted to make blockchain and the lives of devs manageable, so we abstracted away the complexities to help businesses fully harness its potential. So amongst the competition, Zua is a leader in full stack deployment and developer productivity. It takes less than a minute to deploy a smart contract so that you can immediately start building on it and putting transactions into your ledger. We were first to build managed smart contracts, and we offer more cloud-to-cloud integrations than any other blockchain as a service platform. With our smart contracts, you can employ APIs that implement a wide range of distributed ledger tech use cases. And with these integrations, your service gains a cryptographic ledger, proof of process, an API gateway, and witch querying capabilities. Finally, with Zua, there's no lock-in. You can launch on any cloud, hybrid or private. And we work complementary to major blockchain platforms from IBM, Microsoft, Amazon, Oracle, and more. We also offer our own cloud, but it's up to the client to decide on which they'd rather use. So Zua deploys much more on top of Fabric that other platforms don't, including, again, our API, gateway, middleware, and a transaction cache. And overall, companies can focus on business problems, not blockchain problems. So earlier I discussed how public networks are serverless and require less overhead, while private networks can be more secure long-term. Well, with Zua, these two enormous benefits are no longer mutually exclusive. You can have the best of both worlds. So thus far, we've learned a lot from our experiences. We had over 1,000 signups in just a few months live with diverse use cases. Mature use cases are growing in the industry, with crypto becoming less and less of the focus. We're moving away from blockchain being offered as a solution in and of itself, and more towards solving actual problems with blockchain. We've also received interest from power players in the industry, including 2 of the top 5 IT consulting firms. And overall, we've discovered a largely positive trend. And that's that the blockchain market is still developing, but it is quickly progressing beyond the hype curve and gaining true value. We've found several use cases with our platform, including in IoT, voting, and tokens on a private ledger. Our integrations are working well, especially our Dropbox integration. For example, we have a Dropbox integration for health records to get HIPAA-compliant blockchain health records. And our platform's focus is on general purpose, though, so we're industry agnostic. We haven't pigeonholed ourselves into one area and see Zua as a multi-purpose platform. So with all that said, we've noticed several promising trends. So remember Long Blockchain Corp that I mentioned at the beginning? Well, that's a prime example of the halo effect that we often saw. Strong interest in participating in the space with a lack of a mature, actionable use case. This is the type of interest that we're seeing less and less of as time goes on. So we're beginning to move beyond the hype curve as people and businesses are seeing the value of this tech and of our platform. I'm now going to dive into a quick demo of the Zua platform to give you an idea of everything that I've been talking about. So this is the Zua website. To access the console, I'll simply click login. Ooh, that's unfortunate. So Sorry everyone, technical difficulties. Hopefully it's a quick process. And let's give this another shot. Great. Here we are on the Zua console. You can see here its various available smart contracts. So this is going to have 3 sections here. The first one is going to be the Zua managed smart contracts. These are going to be the purpose of these is more so that you can immediately dive into using your own private ledger. These are going to be essentially templates, pre-built templates for each of these different use cases. They are going to be very easy to just dive in and immediately start using. So things like your XLDB are going to look like this is the Zua Ledger database. This is going to look like a standard database. And they're going to be more for your like businessy type people that immediately want to dive in and start playing around with the data. Down here we have our integrations with popular applications that you can access through our API gateway. Things like DocuSign, QuickBooks, SmartThings, and Dropbox. Finally, we have our custom smart contracts section right here. That's where your real developer productivity capabilities are going to be coming out. So really quickly, I'm going to go into the XLDB and show you how to upload a transaction immediately in a really simple manner. I'll just use a sample here. So this transaction right here is essentially, this is going to be a transaction for a Tesla model car. Say this is a DMV database. My VIN number, I can make my my key right here in order to track registrations for cars coming through this data, for cars coming through our network. I can easily save this. And after a couple seconds, I see that my state's been saved and I have a unique transaction ID and my key value pair is located here. So you can see we have a complex JSON doc here with every field filled in. So that's how you can immediately start playing around with the data on this smart contract. If you want to develop your own custom smart contract, you can easily just dive into here. I'll select deploy new. I have my choice of network here. Corda and Sawtooth are still in development, but you can request early access through this. I'll select Hyperledger Fabric. Then I have my choice of source here. I can pull from any number of sources. You can choose your own public or private GitHub or a local upload if you want to pull your own chain code and use that as a starting point. You can also code directly in the browser. I'll instead choose the Zua GitHub, which is loaded with several pre-coded smart contracts. So then I'll select next. I'll do the get set smart contract and use the Hyperledger 1.4 network and select deploy. So here, my own siloed Hyperledger Fabric network is being deployed in the background, including Kafka, the orderer, the underlying chain code. So this is really useful for proof of concepts and rapid prototypes, since it's very easy to immediately start playing with the smart contract. It's also useful for mature applications and it allows you to use our blockchain as a service as well. This right here is my API token. This will identify me to the this gives me basically an identity that identifies a set of permissions that I have for the Hyperledger Fabric network, and it gives me it allows me to interact with the API and immediately start putting data into the smart contract. So I will copy this API token here, and as you can see here, my app has been successfully deployed. It took about a minute with me explaining it, so it'll go much faster if you just simply select through the process. Down here, if I select view on GitHub, I can look at the repository that this code base is being pulled from. This can be a good starting point, since this is a public repository, so you can fork this and customize it to what your needs are. Returning to the smart contract, if I go to the API tab and authorize myself, I now can interact with the API sandbox and immediately start putting transactions onto the ledger. So I'll select try it out up here, and just so that you can interact with this. I'll then select execute, and after a couple seconds, you can see here I have a 200 response code with a unique transaction ID and my payload. If I return to the world state, you can see that the transaction has been uploaded, and I have my key, my value, and my timestamp here. If, say, I want to adjust the transaction, I can jump right back in and adjust the value for the key. I then select execute. And once again, you can see 200 response code, unique transaction ID, new payload. If I return to the world state, you can see that my key value pair has been updated. So the world state is the mutable portion of this database. This shows the state of assets in this ledger as they currently are, who owns what. This isn't possible. This is not possible on the Ethereum network because it's a public network. On a private network, the parties are known, so this is possible here. If I then go to the transactions tab, this is the blockchain portion of the database. So this is the auditable, immutable trail of data that that records every transaction that has ever been uploaded to this. So we have our key, our value, our timestamp, and our unique transaction ID over here. If I return to the API tab, I can go to the monitoring area and see a list of API calls. As you can see here, the the payload is X'd out because it might be sensitive, and this is just proving that the API calls are functioning, the API is functioning properly. If I go to the identities tab, this is the list of identities and their sets of permissions on this smart contract. It's really easy to add a new identity onto this database, or excuse me, onto this ledger, give them a certain set of permissions and potentially the ability to manage identities. So yeah, just created a new identity with read-only access, so they can simply look at this smart contract but not actually interact with it. If I go to logs, I can see after a couple seconds logs generated by the smart contract directly in the browser. So this facilitates the debugging process and shows this is functioning properly. If I go to the Manage tab, it's easy to upgrade the app from the latest code from your GitHub repository, as well as deleting the app. It's another very simple process, specifically because this is a centralized network at the moment. If it were distributed, then it would require a little bit more coordination in order to properly delete this smart contract. The Networks tab here allows you to push your network to an external company, so I could easily add a new network, choose my DLT type, and right here we have you can pull in orders, organizations, certificate authority servers, peers. Those operate through a different third-party platforms, so you would jump onto those and then fill all of this out. Another option here is to go to the External Peers tab, which allows you to basically create a multi-party trust model through creating an observing peer and an endorsing peer. Say I just go into here, see I have my prerequisites here, so I have steps involved in order to properly implement a peer into this network, and then I have my choice of network with which to deploy them on. So there's no lock-in on our network. The data is yours, so you can do with it as you please and choose which network you'd like to operate on. Returning to the apps network, or excuse me, to the Zua console, you can see my list of integrations here. So say I click on the Smart Things application, it'll give you a short list of steps in order to integrate it with the Zua ledger, with your Zua ledger. For example, the SmartThings integration is an IoT hub for smart things located in your house. This provides an auditable, immutable trail of data from data that is uploaded to your smart contract from these devices. So to give you an example of a SmartThings integration with a very mature, rich history of data, I'll go to my ledger here. I'll switch accounts to our founder's account. And after a couple seconds, it should load. It's, there should be about 500,000 blocks on this ledger, as well as nearly 500,000 transactions, so it could take a second to load. Or I may have to refresh the page. Here we go. So yeah, 463,000 blocks and nearly 490,000 transactions. So this is a SmartThings integration that our founder, Jonathan Guarini, had implemented in his home. So we basically installed a bunch of SmartThings devices and have had them upload data to his own personal Zua ledger since September of 2018. So let's look at a couple of the transactions to see what's been going on. So here we have his main foyer motion sensor is inactive. So it's simply checking in to ensure it's functioning properly. His living room motion sensor is active, so something's going on in his living room. And finally, his living room motion sensor is inactive prior to that, so again, simply checking in. For this, the ability to share here allows multiple developers within the same company or same project to coordinate on the same projects. You can see the more creepy capabilities from this ledger here, but from all of this you can see the features and capabilities that we offer and the ease with which you can develop a smart contract on the Zua platform. So with all of this said, I'll return to my presentation here. Let's bring it home now. In 2017, we reached peak blockchain and crypto fever. Companies like Long Blockchain Corp helped create and exploit this craze, resulting in the peak of inflated expectations. After the massive run-up in visibility and market value, there was a drop-off and projects either failed or caught up to their perceived value of early adopters or are still in the process of catching up. It was during this downturn that the fundamentals caught up to the market. We still have a ways to go to reach the slope of enlightenment and ultimately the plateau of productivity, but we're now working our way out of this trough with more mature use cases. To continue this macro section, Deloitte polled large corporations on their attitudes and investments in blockchain technology, and a few stark stats stood out. 53% say that blockchain technology has become a critical priority for their organizations, which is a 10-point increase from last year. But only 23% have initiated a blockchain deployment. This indicates that the industry is headed in the right direction and interest is growing, but there are still many barriers to entry and few mature use cases. Zua is simplifying the equation to allow companies to rapidly prototype in order to explore and discover effective use cases. Our enterprise blockchain application addresses 4 of the top 5 barriers to adopting blockchain. And those are implementation, potential security threats, lack of in-house capabilities, and uncertain ROI. With any luck, we'll be able to drive actionable use cases and accelerate these trends in a positive direction. So to summarize everything that we've discussed, blockchain technology was overhyped and poorly defined, with few reputable projects as progressing beyond proof of concept. However, we are finally moving beyond the hype and gaining true value. Blockchain highlights and can solve key challenges for the continued digital transformation of our society, and it is therefore essential to create a more mature and realistic vision for its prospects in order to realize the blockchain's true potential, and so we don't go through another long blockchain corp debacle. Blockchain complexity is a bottleneck for adoption, and services like Zua that remove barriers to entry move us toward a realization of success for this technology. Thank you so much for listening. I'll take questions now. Any questions?
Yeah, how about, do you have any installations that are, can you talk about any consortiums?
So we are still relatively early in our, basically since we've been live, but we have just established a contract with a larger power player in the industry for software entitlements, basically tracking entitlements for larger companies, so that the auditing practices for that are much simpler and much faster. Usually they're done manually. Instead, if all of this is automated and tracked on a granular blockchain database, then the process for auditing the software licenses is much faster and much easier. I can't go too much into the nature of the consortium because that's still in development right now.
Right. So how far are you along on the Ethereum side?
On the Ethereum side, we haven't seen very much demand around that, and most of our platform response is to the demand that we've seen from people using our platform, and almost all of that demand has been around Hyperledger. Our Ethereum smart contracts are live, but we have yet to see a consortium go live on the Ethereum public network. We've only seen private, essentially proof of authority networks on the Ethereum platform, on basically a private Ethereum platform, network, excuse me.
So when you get approached, how customers are approaching you? Are they approaching you from the blockchain perspective, or are they approaching you more from an applications perspective, and not delegating to you, delegating to you the blockchain, or do they come to you, Are they coming to you because of Hyperledger and say, oh, you're Hyperledger, you have a fabric, or are they coming to you more like, we have a problem, can you help us solve this problem with blockchain? Talk about that.
I mean, it depends on the nature of it. It definitely helps that we're an integral, like a deep member of the Hyperledger community. We're about to be one of the first Hyperledger certified service providers. That's a new program that they started to help push platforms that pass certain tests forward and help them develop. But we've honestly seen both sides of it. Companies that are actively searching for blockchain, as a service provider, as well as companies that are considering adopting blockchain but aren't really sure where to start. So we've gone to, for example, we're going to be planning on going to a precision medicine conference very soon, and we're likely going to be one of the only blockchain companies there, but we're going to be trying to basically spit the gospel. I'm going to be acting out my role as a blockchain evangelist, as well as talking about Zua as well with that. We also, for example, at the Blockchain Expo in Silicon Valley, where people had a good idea of what they were trying to do, they were just trying to find the right provider for what their project, for building out an MVP, a proof of concept, and then progressing further from that. For us, it's due to the customization features and the ability to push out to power player networks, or build consortiums on the power players platforms. That complementary feature and that ability to customize has been a big selling point for us and has helped in selling our platform. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so why did you, can you talk about Corda? Why did you choose Corda and where that's at?
I haven't been in discussions as to why we chose Corda in the first place. I would assume it is because of the demand that we saw behind it. People asking whether we would be offering it, because I mean we're a platform that likes to be able to offer a lot of many different choices to clients and allow them to figure out exactly what works well for them. Because that was something we heard from larger companies as well as startups and individual people working on smaller projects, was that they just wanted more choices.
Because I know that's really taking hold more on the insurance.
That's big in finance. Yeah, that's its focus.
But that's actually not part of Hyperledger, right? No.
Well, neither is Ethereum, but that's one of the core protocols that works. So we chose to build something out from there.
Can you talk a little bit about Sawtooth?
That's another one that it's of course not as fleshed out of a platform on Hyperledger as Fabric. Fabric's the 800-pound gorilla in the room, but that's in the pipeline. That'll be released probably next quarter or the following quarter, so that's coming out sometime within the next 3-4 months, I believe.
Okay. And how as a company, how are you formulating your strategy for implementation? Are you looking at how are you distributing? Are you franchising out to other entities? Are you just growing organically, or how do you see that?
We are mostly growing organically, but we also we also talk with like smaller consulting firms and offering our solutions through them. I mean, our platform offers essentially very broad, high-level 2 types of services. One, we offer a tooling layer where you can use the tools that we are offering in order to make smart contract development much, much simpler. Or the other portion of it is you can essentially outsource that to us entirely and use our development team in order to develop out your smart contracts, and then we'll just work cooperatively on those projects.
So when you have a third-party consulting agency approach you, what is it, a licensing, or how does that work? Is it subscription?
It would be like I believe a revenue sharing type deal, depending on the nature of the contract though. That's more up in the air. Since we are a young company, we don't have established standards yet for these things, since we haven't seen too much of them, but once we see more trends in these, we'll definitely have a process laid out.
So your graph showed that we're in the trough right now?
But we're working our way out of it.
So you figure by 2020, 2021, 22, we'll be getting up along that top of that curve, right?
We'll start seeing real value and mature use cases becoming mature.
Okay. And your platform for smart contracts, you'll eventually be building that should become quite a profitable library that you could become a starting point, so to speak, as we mature, right? Because in the enterprise space, there's a lot of differentiation, but there's a lot of commonality, right?
Absolutely.
So where you start is the common base, and then you differentiate based upon your own strategic IP. So do you see yourself eventually perhaps building, a robust library that you would then license out your smart contracts?
Well, I mean, you saw our pre-built smart contracts already there. Those were use cases that we had been seeing as, trends in the industry. We'll probably continue building out more pre-built smart contracts to give people more choices. I mean, another capability of our platform, another feature of our platform is that it's all located on the cloud and it's cataloged. So say you build an MVP for a supply chain network, and then you're a consulting firm, and then 6 months down the road, you have another client that sees that comes to you with wanting that use case implemented. You can say, oh, I remember I built this customized this supply chain smart contract 6 months ago. It's located in a very easily accessible area that you can see all, like right here. I can access all of my past smart contracts very easily. There's no need to find some specific engineer in your that once worked on one of your projects in order to track down that smart contract. They're all located for the entire team to see in this easy to access area.
For instance, like the home automation example you showed us,
Mm.
right? Could that be something that an organization could take today and turn that into a branded product, an offering?
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely with that integration it would
They
yeah
would
pick it up.
revenue share with you.
If it was, I mean, if that was like a
Let's just say that, for instance, a startup here wanted to create a home automation company,
Mhm.
app, right? And start offering it
to other people.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to just jumpstart by using your platform.
Gotcha. No, we haven't seen anybody come to us with that type of thing yet. So I can't tell you what what that would look like. But that's
If you
definitely
would
something
open
to
up
address.
the technology and the expertise, your expertise in that area, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The network would be operating if you had one of those home automation networks operating, and then you were allowing people to participate in that network. I would assume your smart contracts would be functioning through the Zua platform, and then either potentially using like our cloud on premises, or like with an IBM or something along those lines. So yeah, that would be actually, now that I think about it, more of a license type thing where there would be variable costs involved in that, like how many blocks.
So that's a real world right now
Mm-hmm.
opportunity if you look at warranty maintenance,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and that you already have what seems to be the semblance of the guts of that application. And all you have to do now is just go throw a front-end facade,
Mm-hmm.
brand it, and then behind it would be you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what you showed us today was running on your cloud or,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
local?
Yeah, that's on our cloud. It's of course a centralized network, very small, so
And can you say what cloud you're using?
I can't tell you specifically.
Proprietary?
Yeah.
You like run on Amazon or Azure or?
Mm-hmm. I believe it's AWS, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm less on the technical side more.
Right?
It's all magic to me anyway. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Awesome. Okay.
So isn't the integration free? You guys have already built the SmartThings integration, so theoretically I could come build an app on top of that, right, and sell that to my users.
Yeah, you can find that integration. I mean, those integrations are also like certified on the other side as well. So you can find them on SmartThings on Dropbox as well. Yeah. Any more questions? Is that everything? Fantastic. Thanks for listening, guys. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for coming out. Yeah, that was awesome.
Do you like computers?
Do I-
All right.
They're kind of cool. I like what they can do.
Where is your next stop to be on the road?
I'm going to Charlotte tomorrow.
Oh, really? Wow.
Was in New York yesterday.
Where are you based?
Denver.
Oh, cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, just been going all over.
Badass.
Oh, where in Denver?
Like city it's directly in the city. We just moved to a new office, Galvanize. Yeah, Plaster. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I think they closed the other one.
On Golden Triangle, yeah, that one's closed down. Which is unfortunate because that would have been closer and more convenient. But oh well, it's a great tech spot.
Well, that's a pretty nice location.
At least you weren't in WeWork.
Yeah, that's fair. There are an absurd number of WeWork locations in Denver, though.
I can imagine.
There's a lot.
I can imagine. They were everywhere.
Mm-hmm. It's That's what happens when you get billions of dollars thrown at you.
Oh, that's nuts, it's crazy.
you work for him?
Man, it was nice meeting you. I don't know how often I see you down here, but we're always here. Different area. I think I have you on LinkedIn, so.
Go for it.
Hey, it was really nice meeting you, man. Caleb.
Mark.
Mark, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I just moved down there like a week ago.
From Denver? Where in Denver?
Capitol.
Gotcha. So Cap Hill type area? I lived there for about a year and a half. Great area.
Cool, man. Yeah, reach out if you're ever curious. Self-platform.
We offer free trials, so it's usually about 3 months. So if you want to play around with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're really targeting local guys. Actually, Fort Worth, I'm from Dallas. So yeah, I'm in Fort Worth. I have some friends out in Paris to sell there. So,
Well,
yeah, so one point of contact weird. But we actually, it's funny, like, we met today this morning with the former CEO of BVI for drones, but there's some potential use cases in drones in airspace that we've been kind of going around with. We were looking at initially.
Did you go to hackathon this year?
Doing our
The hackathon? No.
And it's just such a short distance. So we really want to target the drones that are
In
beyond the.
Denver. Is that in Denver?
It's in Wyoming.
Wyoming, that's right. Wyo hackathon. Right. No, I wasn't able to
2
go.
hours.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty easy ride, but I had something else going on that weekend. I can't remember. I'm definitely going to ETH Denver. Already got RSVP accepted. Yeah, in February.
Dan organizing it?
Yeah, I think Dan's a big member of that. I love that guy. He calls himself the cheerleader of the Denver blockchain community, which I think is incredibly accurate thing to say.
So where do you get the funding from?
Our founder is a serial entrepreneur.
Okay.
He was the 1996 Israeli Entrepreneur of the Year. Yeah. He brags about that a lot.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right,
Very
so you
cool.
can literally airdrop them,
That's.
right? And
So he's basically self-funding right now.
They're with, I think, Rogers, the tower company.
We're going to be looking for investments relatively soon.
They'll drop them like cell towers, right? And they've got like three harbors around the country right now, like Chicago, a couple other places. So their edge, so what they do is they locate them within the metro area. Right? So the idea there is that the application is co-located with them, and you get applications that have
It's how much you live.
sub-5 milliseconds.
There's
Imagine that.
personally, no.
Yeah,
But
for sure, because what we,
I run
our
our
company today,
to,
basically,
Twitter
we're
now.
gonna work with lots into the IT
What's
systems.
your
And the goal for a lot of these drone applications of technology is to make, basically have a
members
sense,
get it?
really, like, basic technology. Have a sense of
What's the
the
gimmick?
UI that you can
I don't
control,
know.
maybe a Wi-Fi or,
They have a partnership
Members
with a
get it.
company.
That's it.
A heavy
It's
drone
usually
startup
around like,
that
every like one time a
actually
second, one time a
basically
minute,
partner
something like that.
with the drone developers come in and fly and land
Spread out.
in the